Welcome to the Jungian Anthology Podcast, analytical psychology seminars from the archives of the C.G. Jung Institute of Chicago. Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Exploring the Depths, a 6-month online program. Arlo Compan, chair of the Institute's program committee and past director of training, interviews the facilitators of our new 6-month online program, Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Exploring the Depths. In this monthly online program, Jungian analysts and experts will introduce the major themes of analytical psychology as Carl Jung developed them across his life, beginning in his early 20s and ending in his 80s. Through presentations, facilitated large and small group interaction, and paired experiential exercises, we will explore these themes from Jung's writings in relationship to the events of his life and then connected to our contemporary experiences. The facilitators being interviewed are Adina Davidson, PhD, a Jungian analyst practicing in Cleveland, Ohio; Andrea Gaspar-Gonzalez, PsyD, a clinical psychologist practicing in the Chicagoland area with a focus on the treatment of trauma and sexual abuse, and a recent fellow of the Jungian psychotherapy program at the Institute; and Dan Ross, a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner and Jungian analyst working in the field of hospice and palliative care and as a psychotherapist in Chicago. For more information about the program, the facilitators, the schedule, learning objectives, readings, and the curriculum of each weekend, follow the link in the show notes or visit our website, jungchicago.org.
I'm delighted to have the opportunity to talk about an exciting new program at the Institute and to speak with the 3 people who are going to be directing the program over the coming 6 months, beginning in January. So this is a delightful time to get a sense of how you guys have put this all together and what it is that it's going to enable participants to do and be. So let me ask you to just say a word or two about yourselves, and then we'll talk about the program. Dan, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Arlo. I feel like I've been on this journey to discover Jung for many, many years. And it began with the Jungian psychotherapy program, what at that time was called the clinical training program. And that was all the way back in 2006. And I think I caught the bug in wanting to learn more. And I think that discovery continues, the passion about it continues. And I ended up becoming a nurse practitioner, a psychiatric nurse practitioner, and that's my licensure, and then completed the analyst training program at the Jung Institute of Chicago, and I've been in practice ever since. And my interest has been for all these years is teaching. Teaching about Jung, and teaching about analytical psychology. And so that has got me excited about this program that we're offering.
Great, thanks, Dan. Adina?
So I am a therapist in private practice in Cleveland, Ohio, actually, but I recently finished the analytic training program through the C.G. Jung Institute of Chicago. And I also have been fascinated, engulfed by Jung for many, many years. And I think in a different way than Dan. I think that my first, this is something I need to explore, to get deeper into, actually came when I was teaching a psych class at a local art school, a psychology class at a local art school. And the chair of my department said, well, these are art students. You need to teach Jung and Lacan, who I never taught. And first time I read about Jung, and I said, this is a theory that encompasses the whole human being, where we don't have to chop off pieces of ourselves, of our clients, of humanity, in order to engage with this theory. And for me in particular, the O was that spirit, that there was something in healing that is beyond our individual egoic selves. And I continue to find that in Jung, and I believe that will be in this program as well.
Great, thanks, Adina. And so finally, Andrea, tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Arlo. So thinking about this, I recently completed my fellowship with the C.G. Jung Institute of Chicago through their Jungian psychotherapy program, which is one of their 2-year programs offered at the Institute. And I went through it as a fellow, and I went through it previously on the Jungian Studies program side, actually while I was in graduate school, because I can't get enough learning. And I was thinking about this, and I was really trying to pinpoint, how I came to Jung, because I know it was pretty much at the very beginning of my graduate studies. And I know it was kind of at the beginning of my dissertation process and thinking about my dissertation and what I wanted to research. And I can't pinpoint actually the exact moment. I'm struggling to find that. But when I was kind of researching ideas and thinking about it, I came across Jung, or maybe Jung's writings came across me. I think sometimes it feels like it works that way, that there is a meeting there that happens that I find exciting about Jung's theory when I'm engaged in training or when I'm reading, that it feels connected to me in a way. And it suits, who I am as a person and how I discover my own processes and how I connect to the world outside. And that's what I love about Jung. As Adina said, both that we don't have to, split off parts of ourselves. There's a wholeness to it. And it's not just the wholeness in the individual, but it goes beyond that into the culture and into the world that we live in. And I find that to be so exciting and a breath of fresh air. So that's kind of how I came through it and went through graduate school, doing research in Jung's work and post-Jungian work, and continued from there. It's almost been 8 years now, so I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. I had the delightful chance of sort of walking with you guys as you put together the program. And I think it's going to be a really exciting, interesting kind of adventure and informative. So tell us a little bit about what you find exciting about doing this particular program. It's titled Memory Streams Reflections, Exploring the Depths, and works a great deal with Jung's writing and some additional writing.
Yeah, so I think just beginning with the title, that Memory Streams Reflections conjures up Jung's autobiography and Jung's own words in many of the sections regarding reflecting on his life. And I think what's exciting about this program for me is that we connected, not only are we looking at Jung's works in a chronological fashion, that we divided up into early, middle, and late periods. Not only are we looking at his original writing to some extent, but also looking at secondary writers, post-Jungian analysts that have written and helped clarify and expand on Jung's theorizing, and also connecting all of that to Jung's life. And I think that's what's exciting for me, is that particularly in this time, this rather scary period of time that we're in, with the pandemic going on and social tensions rising up, I think it has activated a lot of people's anxieties and has brought a lot of people, I think, to therapy and analysis. And I think this program gives us an opportunity to look at Jung and his work in a way that, as Andrea very passionately connected with, to allow many more people to passionately connect with theory and writing and ideas that are very influential. I remember a couple of days ago, my son sent me a picture of the cover of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and I never knew that one of the photos of the people in the background was Carl Jung. And I was like, wow. And it just reminds me of how influential Jung was throughout the arts, literature, as well as in science and in psychotherapy. And I'm excited that we're able to bring all of this together into the 6-month program.
Great. I think your design of sort of tracking how the different concepts developed across Jung's life is really a quite exciting kind of approach, and in some ways parallels perhaps our own sort of awareness of our lifespan. So that parallel is an exciting piece, I think, of what you're doing.
Yeah. I'm reminded, just to finish up my idea, I'm reminded of a statement, the first sentence in Jung's volume 7 of his collected work. He says, "A collapse of the conscious attitude is no small matter. It always feels like the end of the world, as though everything had tumbled back into original chaos." I mean, that's Jung. That's where, and that's also what Jung went through. When we go through Memories, Dreams, Reflections, we're talking about a man that had to live through his own collapse of conscious attitude, and how he struggled through that. I think is a model for us, and how to change, and what does it mean to change.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great. Adina, what excites you about the program?
Well, first of all, what Dan said. And then what I would add to that is, I think Jung's it operates at the program is going to operate at 2 levels. And I think that that's important, right? We're going to be reading Jung's autobiography, Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, and hearing his story of his individuation process really as a story. But at the same time, we're going to be honing in on his intellectual development and his development of his ideas of how human beings individuate. So we're going to connect his personal individuation story with his sense of overall, in general, how we all individuate. And I think that gives us a chance to do something more than what you do when you read a memoir, even if that memoir touches you very deeply, because it also gives us a chance to take that memoir, to take the affect, the feelings that come with reading a memoir, and connect them to an intellectual system that helps us make kind of ongoing sense of ourselves and our individuation process. And that's what I'm really hoping that we're going to be able to do, is really use the development of Jung as a person, and the development of Jung's ideas, and the expansion of those ideas after his death. Use those as lenses into our own change process. Again, as Andrea said, both as individuals and as a culture, and particularly, as Dan said, in this cultural moment of, it feels like things are descending into chaos. How is that going to change us?
Yeah, that sort of sense, again, of change being sometimes experienced clearly as a death, not easy on the ego. Thanks, Andrea. Adina. Andrea, tell us a little bit about what excites you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm going to have to build then on the good foundation that Dan and Adina gave, because everything they brought up, I agree with. And I have to say, kind of from the beginning, creating this program, with Dan and Adina the energy around creating it has been exciting. So the whole process, I think about, we're in a unique time right now, right? We're dealing with our sense of isolation during COVID and not being able to connect, in person, and, coming together to want to be really intentional about creating a program that fits the time that we're in both, the cultural time, this descent that we're experiencing, but also this new reality of kind of being in our own spaces, but somehow still trying to find a way to be together. So in thinking about the program kind of that way, I think in some ways, this created a wonderful opportunity for us to be really creative together and create something new and relevant, to what we're all living through right now. And then aside from that, kind of tipping my hat to what Adina said, there's this grounding between the theory and life, and his life and Jung's life. So there's this connection that we're creating that I think it's so important. I think, I've certainly, encountered people, and I think some people have an idea of Jung and his writings as being, too heady or unapproachable or too intellectual. That's something that I've encountered with people sometimes. And once you get into it, you have a different relationship with it. But I love that we are taking, memories, dreams, reflections, and we are going and tying these things together. The development of these theories tied into his life, that you're kind of bringing it down in some way into Jung's body and Jung's experience. And that's what we need to do individually too. And what we need to do culturally is to bring these things down into our experience, into our lived experience. It's a different way of understanding it altogether. And, as I mentioned, I've been through, the Jung Institute's, the JSP first, and then the JPP as a fellow. And this is a unique offering in that way. Going through those programs, I won't talk about that because I could also talk about that all day long, but this offers something very different in that it's a development, a developmental lens, and then, and a grounding, there's a grounding aspect. And it's unique. It's new, and I'm really excited about doing that kind of work in this environment.
Yeah, great. Well, I love how you've all gone about designing something that's going to be done completely online. That's really a bit new for us at the Institute. We're all trying to get our feet grounded there. But I think you've put together a really interesting sort of process. And I would like you to talk a little bit about how you've organized that, because it's, I think, really very interesting how you're going to be meeting with the participants. So let me ask you, Adina, to talk a little bit about that, and especially the two-person thing.
Yeah, so, I think there's going to be almost two central ways of learning that are going to happen. The one is going to be the intensive weekend, the 6 intensive weekends that we're going to be doing. And that'll be a combination of sort of large group, more formal learning, and then small group intensive discussions of the effects of the reading on the participants, which will be leading those in small groups. But then, and I think this is one of the more unique things about this program, is that in between the intensive weekends, each student is going to be paired with another student for a in-depth conversation, hopefully about an hour a week, the 3 weeks in between the sessions, and really dive into the material in ways that suit that pair. So it may be experiential, it may be kind of an open art kind of a session, it may be a very intellectual discussion of the reading, it may be personal sharing. All of those options are open to the pairs, but those pairs will give people a chance to really, they could hone in on one paragraph in a reading and really spend an entire session on that. And this kind of learning, this paired learning, is a very, very old method of text study in the Jewish world, where the bulk of the learning around the commentary on the Bible happens in these pairs. So we thought that it would be interesting. It's an interesting model for how people, A, can sustain the learning between the intensive weekends, B, can build personal connection to another learner to kind of build a more intensive learning community for themselves, and C, can dive really deeply into the texts. So that's the kind of paired learning piece of it.
And it's my understanding, the paired learning, you will be switching between each month. You'll work with a different paired person. Is that correct?
I think what we're going to do is we're going to pair people for 2 months to give them a chance to really form a connection to each other. And then, but every 2 months we'll switch so that people will have a chance to form that connection with at least 3 people during the course of the learning.
You know, Adina, it just occurred to me, and I hadn't told you this before, but it occurred to me as you're talking about this paired learning, which I think is a brilliant idea. When I was in the clinical training program, which became the JPP, I globbed onto one other person. And he and I went through the whole program together with this, and I hadn't met him before, and we became very, very close. But it occurred to me that there was a natural thing that occurred. It helped anchor me through the program. So the fact that we're structuring it that way, I think, is very valuable.
And Dan, when you and I studied for the big qualifying exams for analytic training, you and I were a pair. And we just decided to pair up and study together. And it certainly was helpful for me. So,
and I think it's delightful for us introverts that we like 1-to-1 in some ways much more than we like 1-to-10. But so it's delightful. Anything that you want to add, Andrea or Dan, about the structure of the groups and the lectures and so forth?
I just want to throw in one more thing around that. So this material is likely to and designed to bring up all kinds of emotional, intellectual curiosity. And so experiencing that in a safe way is very important. The program is designed around providing that safety so that people can explore their own lives, both on an emotional level and intellectual level. And as both Andrea and Adina said, this is a movement from the head to the body. It's supposed to be. It's what Jung's work is about. Because we start out, when somebody begins therapy, they're coming often with either depression or anxiety or a combination of the two. And that's stuff emerging from the body that has not yet been differentiated and processed, and a narrative built around. And and so the program is designed that way. And day 2 in particular, the process groups are designed to allow people to talk freely about their experience, to bring their experience to that framework, and be able to talk freely with a facilitator and others in that small group to be able to process what it is that they're experiencing. And I think that also makes our program unique.
Yes, I jump in
Andrea?
with what Dan was saying. Yeah, sorry. That the idea of containment or container, I mean, we had a lot of conversations about that, and how to provide that space and that feeling of connection and safety and being able to share, because, you know, as we know, it's a unique thing to try to develop, you know, in an online program, but it was something that we felt was very essential at the same time. And yeah, I'm glad that you brought up, you know, Sunday's process groups, because I think that part is a very important element. Of course, you know, the lecture and everything else is, I mean, I think everything else is great and important too, but being able to really connect, you know, with each other, with a facilitator, you know, in a smaller environment than you have on Saturday with the larger kind of lecture group, is essential for being able to feel that safety and feel that containment. You know, we hope to have that feeling both in the large group and the small group, sort of as the whole unit there, right? A wholeness. But this brings it into, you know, kind of a more intimate space, a different sort of relationship. And so you get to experience these things, and you get to experience containment in different ways with the material. And I think that's, you know, something that we had a lot of conversations about and is important. And something that I think, you know, I'm looking forward to seeing, you know, how that goes with the program, and pretty excited about.
Good, maybe to identify that each of you will work with a small group for the duration of the 6 months. People will stay in the same small group, and they'll work with the same small group leader for that period of time, which can provide some safety. That's correct, Andrea?
Yeah, that's right. And I think I want to, you know, say too that you know, this process group, it's processing the individual experience, which I think that you know, Dan and Adina both touched on, and that in this group environment, processing the group, processing with the facilitator, it's a different type of process group, you know, than say like a clinical consultation group. This is something different than that, and really bringing it, you know, connecting, right, the head and the body, and connecting relationally. So it's a different kind of processing, but we'll each be leading one. And I think that'll be great. I think we'll have a lot of conversations around that too. So we each have our own unique personalities, which I think is great, but there will also be, you know, I think a through line in how we think about those each month, and what we want to, you know, how we want to help frame that.
Yeah, excellent. And if I understand, have you set a maximum number for the program, or not necessarily?
No, because we're waiting to see how many people are interested, and then trying to design the program to accommodate those people.
But there will be a maximum number of people who are in the small groups.
Small groups.
Yeah.
Those will be at 10, so that again, people really do have this chance to connect to each other, to be heard, to form a community within their small group. So that even if the Saturday sort of lecture might be fairly large, there will always be these more intimate gatherings within the program.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was thinking. The small groups will stay small groups. Thinking about somebody who's looking at taking the program, what would you say about how much do they need to know about Jung? How much do they need to have read about Jung? What's the level of your expectations for the participants in terms of knowing about Jung?
I think we designed this for both people that are have no information about Jung, that are interested in learning about him, and those that have begun a journey of learning about Jung and studying Jung, and have some experience with that. So, and I think we've designed it so that both will benefit from it. In other words, it's not so advanced that a beginner person that's interested is not going to gain something, because we're starting with Memories, Dreams, Reflections, the autobiography, and that is going to be valuable. Then we're building on that with the rest of the program. So I think anybody that wants to begin or build on your experience of Jung will benefit.
I think that's great. I'm aware that there's a lot of people whose first introductions to Jung have been reading Memories, Dreams, Reflections.
Right.
And so it is, I think, a wonderful entree. On the other hand, it's also very interesting, if you read some of Jung, to be able to track his own personal development along with the tracking of his theories, and that's a whole new kind of additional piece. So I think it works really, really well.
Yeah, I would say, I think that's something, that I'm excited about and I think is unique. And I can't speak to the, analyst training program. I'm not an analyst. I come through Jung in a different sort of way. But having gone, through other training, it seems to be, more concept oriented. And so that you're going through a different portal, right? To sort of understand Jung in theory and connect it to yourself. So this connection through development of his life and grounding it, in this memoir and, periods of life and how theory kind of matched what he was going through. I think it's, I'm excited about it. It's a unique kind of offering. It's different and new, kind of even thinking about, the training experiences I've had. Like I haven't had this in a training experience. It was exciting to sit down together and create and think about, how we could bring something new and something different, that even if you've gone through, different programs at the Institute, and again, I can't speak to the analyst training program, but this will still provide something exciting. And one thing I love about Jung is that I also feel like even if you've had the experience of going through Jung in a certain way, you can go through it again and it could be a completely different experience, even if you're taking the same approach. The first time I went through the JPP was different than the second time. And if I did it again, I know it would be different because you're also different in that moment. And so whatever you're experiencing, in yourself, in your life, whatever's happening in the outside world, I think is going to play a part in how you experience, the learning process, how you experience this theory, how it comes into your body, how your intuition might interplay with it, or how your, intellectual side might interplay with it. You're not the same person, at any point in time in life. And so how you connect is going to be different too. Uh-huh. And Jung has such depth. I think you could read the same thing over and over again and get a different thing every time.
One of the things that I had to adjust to, and so now I offer that to people that begin this journey and get frustrated because they're reading stuff that they don't get sometimes. And, every once in a while you read a gem of a statement or a paragraph or an essay that really hits home. Well, the longer you're in this, the more of those gems seem to appear. And I tell people, be patient with yourself. If something doesn't make sense, let it go, because when you come back to it next time, you're going to have a wider scope of consciousness that's going to be able to collect it and take it in and own it more. And so I find myself saying that a lot to people that are on this journey to discover themselves through Jung.
The one thing that I would say is that for the person who's interested in this program, who's done some studying already, I think this offers a chance to use the original sources and see how the ideas develop over time, that I don't think that most other learning opportunities offer. If it's your first go round, I think it'll be great, but I think if it's your second or third, it also, because of this kind of starting from him as a young man, starting from his ideas when he was a young man, starting how and how all of that influenced the Jungian world in general, and then moving into middle age and moving into old age, and how those ideas, how we see those core of those ideas changing, developing, blossoming into something more rich, more complex over time. I think I'm certainly planning on learning a lot as I go through that process. So,
and we do as teachers, facilitators, we continue learning as well.
Yeah, that's the remarkable part of individuation, that you're leading this is still going to be part of your own individuation process. And we're all on the journey together. Well, I want to give you each an opportunity to say something that you want to make sure gets put on and say, because we need to look at kind of ending. So what final comments would you like to make?
I guess I would say that I'm really looking forward to seeing how this ends up being, how it comes together, what it's like, how the group ends up, forming, coming together in a relational way, online, and seeing, what we all take away from it and what people have to bring to it too. I think it's an excellent point that, we continue in our learning and individuation process, even as facilitators, even people coming into lecture, it's in relationship. And I'm looking forward to interacting with the material and with each other and kind of moving out, of these sort of, individual pods of isolation into community.
Yeah, I think the thing that I am most excited about is the chance to both facilitate and be part of a passionate, sustained learning community.
Yeah, having a forum for people to discover themselves, which is always my interest when I'm teaching. That when I get before a group, whether it's in front of people in person or online, the opportunity to discover newness is very exciting to me, and I think this forum will offer that.
Great. Well, thank you, Dan, Adina, and Andrea. Appreciate the conversation, and I'm eager to see how it all goes.
Thank you, Arlo.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arlo.
Yeah, bye-bye.
This podcast is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license. Share it all you like as long as you maintain the attribution to the speaker, but please do not change it or sell it. If you like this episode, tell your friends about us or leave us a review on iTunes. For more information about classes, training programs, videos, audio, this podcast, or to find a Jungian analyst near you, visit our website, www.jungchicago.org. Thank you to our 2019 supporter level donors, Bill Alexi, Usha and Ashok Bedi, Circle Center Yoga, Arlo and Rena Compan, Eric Cooper and Judith Cooper, Lorna Crowell, D. Scott Dayton, George J. Didier, the Kull Family Foundation, Ramakrishnan and Full Bloom Lotus, Suzanne G. Rosenthal, Deborah Stutzman, Deborah Tobin, Alexander Wayne and Lynn Kopp, and Gerald Weiner. If you would like to support this podcast, just go to jungchicago.org/give.